Hello everyone, my name is Marsh. This is my review of the 4th episode of The Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. Let's jump into it. So, episode 4. This is going to be a spoiler-filled review, so if you haven't watched the episode just yet, feel free to pause the video, go and watch the episode, and click back in if you want. But I'm going to start with some pros, some cons, and then I'll talk about any plot holes that I may have noticed or any things that may have bothered me throughout the episode or my overall thoughts and speculation. And we'll just take it from there. So the first pro I have with the episode is actually that they are not splitting up the story as much as they were in the first 2 episodes. The first 2 episodes had an issue where they were trying to cover multiple different things in multiple different areas. And so they were introducing new character after new character after new character, and we weren't able to get connected to a single storyline or a plot. Now we're starting to spend more time with one singular plot throughout the episode and building that. It looks like they're using Galadriel as the main person who's linking all the episodes together, and then they're sprinkling in a few side stories on the way. So, for example, last week it was Galadriel's storyline with Halbrand, and then they had the storyline with the elf. I always forget his name, I apologize. As well as the storyline with the Harfoots. Now it's still Galadriel as the main storyline within Numenor itself, and they're bringing in the elf once again. He's like the secondary main storyline to go through, because he's the one with the perspective of the orcs actually attacking and wreaking havoc on the humans of the Southlands. And then along with that, instead of the Harfoots this time, we sprinkled back into Elrond, which is good because I felt originally Elrond was one of the stronger plot lines, especially with his connection with Durin. We'll go ahead and get to Durin in the later part of this episode review, but for now, we'll go ahead and jump into a con real quick. So my first con goes back to what I was talking about with Galadriel. I've had trouble connecting with her because of her personality, and she's like very brash and arrogant, and she just wants to do things her way. She thinks she's always right. That's not the main con I want to talk about, though. What I want to talk about is the writing in particular between Galadriel and how she communicates with the Numenorians. I don't feel like it's done very well between their dialogue. So, for example, when she's speaking with the Numenorian queen, the first thing that's mentioned, she says, "Oh, you rode off and broke into our place and stole our ancient scripts," and things like that. And it's like, really? She literally didn't do that. Elendil is the one who told her, "Come with me," and they rode together. They didn't steal them. They borrowed them. They literally brought them to you. That's not stealing. So it's stupid. She's like accusing her right away. It's just childish and idiotic that they can't even have a conversation, essentially. And it eventually builds up and builds up until Galadriel gets arrested because she was not wanting to listen to the queen's word, and she wanted to go behind her back, and she requested a summons with the king, which we learn later in the episode isn't possible, but not the public doesn't know that though. And then it leads to her talking to Halbrand, and if Halbrand isn't the biggest Sauron red herring I've seen, then I don't know what is. I kept thinking he was Sauron in the previous episode, but the more I think about it now, he's just a pure red herring. I don't think they're actually going to go for it. If they do make him Sauron, I think it's just too obvious and a really bad choice at this point. It'd be better if he's a red herring. But the first point as to why I believe he's a red herring is when he's talking to her about fears of people and manipulating people. He talks about you need to learn their fears, not so that you can scare them, but so that you can try to teach them to master their fears so that they listen to you, which is something Galadriel listens to actually when she learns what the fears of Numenor are and uses that to get her way eventually. But going back to the fears idea, what we know of Sauron, I'm not an expert when it comes to Silmarillion and everything, but I do know a little bit about what happens. I know he creates the ring and deceives everyone, and part of creating the ring and deceiving everyone was he took their fears of an impending doom and tricked them into making the rings to protect themselves. And so he is basically forecasting what he is going to do if he is Sauron, that he's going to use the people's fears to make the rings and do all of that right in front of Galadriel's face. Obviously she doesn't know it because it's back in that time and we know what happens going forward, but he's just such a red herring. And the other thing that bothered me, someone told me he's just a secondhand Aragorn. If you think about it, He's of a royal lineage that isn't in power anymore necessarily, and he's secretive. He doesn't want to talk about it. Mysterious, good looking, like very suave, smart, and skillful. He's like a secondhand Aragon. Since someone told me that, I can't really get it out of my mind. But he's not really there much in the episode outside of that part where he's telling her and teaching her about manipulating people's fears. That's like his main point, and his main point in being a red herring. It's kind of a negative because I feel like it's such an obvious red herring, but I think it's even more of a negative if they make him Sauron at this point. I feel like they need to bring Sauron in from another point of view or another perspective or something else, because Sauron is supposed to be this trickster that manipulates them, but Halbrand is just so obvious that it would just be bad writing with all the hints they're giving, I feel like. And I don't know if that's just me looking into it too much because I know what Sauron does and what he's trying to do. It could be that, but I don't think so. But going into another positive in the episode. So one of the positives is with Arendir's storyline. I really like what they're doing with him, showing like making him sort of like the warrior, and also the messenger in a way. We see Adar, I believe it is, comes out, and he's a corrupted elf. And as we know, orcs are elves that have become corrupted over time and developed into these creatures. And so he's their overall leader that controls everything. And he basically tells him, I want you to give a message to everyone. And that message is that either they surrender or they're going to take over everything. It's not much of a message. It's just like a warning. Most of the people don't really know about the orcs necessarily. So I don't know if it's the best idea, but either way, it's a good... I do like what they're doing with Arendir so far. One thing I just want to mention again that I mentioned in the previous review is how badly they make the wargs look. There's a point where there's a warg behind Arendir that like snaps. They look so ugly. Literally, I'll put a picture of one from Lord of the Rings and then the one from the Rings of Power. And they're just so... How do you get uglier in 20 years and with $1 billion budget? Anyways, that's just my gripe about that. Going back on that storyline and developing, we get our second mystery overall, I would say. The first one was with the stranger who wasn't in this episode. Second is that of the black hilt that we know belongs to Morgoth in some way. My theory is that this hilt is something that turns like the human into like a ring wraith in a way. As we know, the ring wraiths are the ones that work for Sauron and everything. I don't know if that's true at all. That's just a guess of where it's leading. But it is interesting seeing that the human blood is what activates it and makes it grow into an actual sword. And all the orcs are searching for it, including Adar, who's telling the orcs to search for it. So we'll see what happens with that. We do learn later in the episode that it is something that was handed down in the generations of humans that fought for Morgoth, and that the barkeeper, I believe it was originally, he was the one that it belonged to, that the son stole it from. And he explained that it's for Morgoth. So obviously we're going to have the son turn in some way evil and go to be a servant of Sauron. That's why I was leading towards like a ring wraith possibly. We'll see what he does with that. And going back a little on that point, there was the part where the mother like came and saved them in the forest. I don't think that was really necessary. They should have just kept it with Arendir and the son. Like, what is she going to do coming in with a sickle and no armor when there's literally like 60 orcs like in front of you shooting? She literally does nothing except stand there and like help drag the son a bit. And why is she like randomly coming out? I get that no one was helping her because they're like, your son's dead, but like she just randomly shows him the forest. That was a little weird, but they just wanted to get that good shot with like the sunset and everything. It was something done for the prettiness because it is a very pretty show. So on to my last positive, that would be with Durin's Bane. I think they handled this well, building it up and sort of showing the seeds that created the issue. As we know with Durin's Bane, what happened is they got greedy and started digging more and more into the mines deeper and deeper until an evil arose. And so they were showing the evil arising because they were trying to mine for the mithril. So I liked how they were setting that up. I also still like the relationship between Elrond and Durin and how they're handling that. I didn't like Disa as much in this episode as I did in the original one. I don't know what it is exactly. I think it was some of her dialogue, but then I do enjoy some things with her as well. The way that her and Durin work together, I enjoy. For example, when they were basically tricking Elrond or like baiting him because they knew he could hear her. So it was pretty obvious that was going to happen. And then Elrond goes and visits them and learns about the Mithril and everything. And so we'll see what happens with that. Obviously, they're building towards Bane, where everyone's going to die in Moria because they get too greedy and they want more Mithril. But it was nice to see those seeds planted for that. Yeah, so overall, that's what I thought about the episode. Had a few pros and cons. Pros would be Durin's Bane, the elf, the mystery behind the hilt, and then some of the cons are like still Galadriel, still the ways they handle that, a little bit of the Numenor stuff, not any CGI stuff, practicality stuff when it comes to how they handle certain situations and not in a non-realistic way. They do it for the shot sometimes, you could easily tell. But overall, those are just some pros and cons. I want you to let me know what you thought of the episode overall, though. In my opinion, I'd probably give this one a 6 out of 10. Not as high on it as previous episode. The other episodes, I don't know, the show's very average right now to me. The budget pushes it up, but the story is just average. There's certain issues I have with like the way they do dialogue. It's kind of obvious and they set themselves up, so they'll say something in the beginning of the episode and it leads to like a benefit later in the episode, which is something you should do, but I don't feel like it's usually well deserved when it happens. For example, with Galadriel and the Palantir and using fears to master that, I didn't think it was tackled in a very good way. I mean, it was beautiful, of course, with the petals and everything, but it could have been done a bit better. Could have been built up a little bit more. They could have talked about the fears the last episode. This way, it like grew a little more because I felt like that was rushed. But we'll see what happens going forward. All the Numenorians trying to push to help everyone in the West, surprisingly, because they're afraid of the Valar punishing them because of the visions. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, overall, let me know what you think about the episode. For me, 6 out of 10. Had a few issues, as you've heard. And let me know if you liked it, you didn't like it, what would you change, anything stuck out to you. Overall, though, that's it for the review for today. Thank you for watching, though. If you can like and subscribe, that would be much appreciated. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.